Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm representing the team at Coachletic. We're working on a solution that helps sports organizations gather and make use of data. After many iterations through the business model canvas, we've come a long way. Unintentionally, this idea came from a school project. Badminton Canada asked me to develop a marketing case competition around the launch of one of their new report card programs. As part of the case, I reached out to 8 sports clubs to understand their current processes. I noticed that many coaches and club owners did their admin work manually. The more I investigated, the more I realized how significant this problem is. This led to my first hypothesis, that managing administration is very difficult for coaches and they want to save time. To learn more, I approached the badminton coach I knew from high school, Pry Ganana. He runs 2 clubs with more than 500 members, and he quickly empathized with the problem. All of his registrations were on paper and stored in a large box. He also showed me a stack of stale-dated checks which accumulated over the year from forgetting to deposit them. Based on this feedback, a new hypothesis for the value proposition emerged. Coaches want to reduce the effort of accepting registration and payments and put the time towards what matters most, coaching. As a result, they would be open to using software. Up until now, I had established a base value proposition in customer segment. Having a technical background, I created an MVP. It was an online registration and payment form for club memberships. Pry began using it right away. At this point, I saw that there might be an opportunity here. I enlisted the help of my close friends and classmates, Anastasia, Danielle, and Justin. From there, we jumped straight into validation. Throughout the winter break, we had more than 50 interviews with sports-related organizations, including clubs, athletic facilities, and top coaches. Although the majority of them were in badminton, we included ones from tennis, volleyball, and squash to see if the problems resonated with them too. Justin, a former provincial athlete, has a vast network in badminton, and so that became the logical entry point. From the interviews, we arrived at our next hypothesis, that every organization using a manual registration process would find value in our solution and would want to use it. The first interview was with John Chen from Chen's Badminton Club. We realized that the friction points we aimed to solve were not dire for him. Because he had a small club with only 30 members, and because he had the do-it-by-hand mentality, he was sure that he could manage all of the admin work himself. With that, our hypothesis had been disproven. Only those who really struggled managing their members or those who instinctively valued technology would use Coachletic. We then began developing another hypothesis. Clubs want an all-inclusive solution that does more than just registration. While most wanted additional features, not everyone wanted the same ones. Some already had a website developed, while others had no website at all. However, all of them needed to accept registration and payments, which they do manually. As a developer, I knew that building a solution with every feature would take a lot of resources. We decided to narrow down our scope to the features we heard mentioned most, including cart booking and exit and entry control. With these features, the clubs could potentially eliminate the need for a desk administrator altogether, thereby seeing an immediate return on investment. While many clubs would value additional features, the unifying core value proposition is still registration and payment processing. Another assumption we had was that people using competing software would not find value in our solution because they had already reduced their administration time. This was not the case. Tom from Everyday Badminton Club was a prime example of how this hypothesis was disproven. He understood the value of having a solution to do registration and hold records. However, his implementation of it was using Google Contacts. He made a new account for each member and then recorded payments in the notes. He said he used Google Contacts to keep consistent with the rest of the Google suite, and because he didn't know what else to do. He said that an online solution was the only way that he could make use of his members' data. We found that point very interesting, as we realized that data must be quite inaccessible, yet extremely valuable. And so, our next hypothesis was that sport organizations find value in data because it helps them understand their members and perform basic analytics, such as who's coming back year after year. This hypothesis turned out to be true. Lots of club owners really resonated with this value. Finally, with all those interviews, we were gaining traction. 10 early adopter clubs began using the solution, one of them being a top youth badminton club in Canada. To date, we've processed more than $2,000 in transactions and have more than 5,000 athletes in our database. We considered charging a transaction fee for each payment we processed on behalf of clubs and found that there wouldn't be a problem as long as the rate was competitive. Revenue could be generated on the difference between our merchant processor's discount rate and the fee we charge to customers. It is estimated that the average club would process around $50,000 per year. On January 8, 2016, we attended the Toronto Open, a national badminton tournament. This provided us with the opportunity to get in touch with national and provincial sport organizations, coaches, and end users. We spoke to Ian, the president of the Ontario Badminton Association, about some of the challenges they were facing. A recurring theme that came up was knowing the numbers. He needed data about badminton players and fans to report back to their superiors and to gain funding and find areas for improvement. When we introduced Coachletic, Ian was ecstatic. He wanted us to present our software at the next annual general meeting so that all the districts could push it down to their clubs. This would allow them to get the numbers that they needed and help us push Coachletic from the top down. Ian is also the former president of Rowing Canada and is the current CEO of Speed Skating Canada. He mentioned that the other government sport organizations had the exact same problems and had paid hundreds of thousands of dollars on failed solutions. Thinking back to Tom, who was using Google Contacts, and Ian from Badminton, Ontario, it was evident that there is immense value in data, whether that be on the microscale of a club or at the vast level of a government sports organization. They crave the insights and are willing to pay for them. This led us to establishing another component of our value proposition and additional customer segments. By building out a product that collects data from clubs, events, and other areas in sports, we are populating a large database. Once the critical mass is reached, the data becomes extremely valuable to large enterprises, extending beyond the government sports organizations. It also includes advertisers, sports apparel companies, and sports media. After the interviews, we began to fill out the other parts of the canvas. We need a sales force to develop relationships with government sports organizations and leading sports clubs to bring them on as key partners. Initial resources would be dedicated towards the development of the software and to acquiring sales. Costs associated with providing the product would include hosting and licensing fees. The business model canvas shows us that many problems exist within sports organizations when it comes to collecting and making use of data. Ultimately, our goal at Coachletic is to simplify and process so that data is on your team.